Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 598.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because we are going to talk about all of the things that, well, honestly, if you are one of those individuals listening right now, you're on your way to work, you're on your way home from work, or you're dreading about going back to work, that I think we have a story for you today that's going to inspire you to possibly leave that job sooner than you think, and more importantly, lay down a path. Help you see that you can do it regardless of where you're starting from. More importantly than any of that is where you start isn't necessarily where you stay, because all of us as entrepreneurs are on this journey and we're growing. We're becoming more. We're learning how to deliver more value to the marketplace in many different ways. And that's what's amazing, because whether you realize it or not, every human is attracted to the concept known as the increasing and or advancing man. Now, I have with me today one such advancing man, and what's exciting is that he calls himself a corporate dropout, not a college dropout, a corporate dropout, which I absolutely love. He is known for house hacking, and I am, of course, talking about Jimmy Murray. Now, one of the things that I am saying to you, that one of the questions that we have got to find out today is, I don't know if you've been over or seen his Instagram handle, but when someone is willing to call themselves the notorious CFK, it really makes me wonder if there's a story. So we're going to definitely find that out. But most importantly, those of you who have been wondering about the ins and outs of property management, more importantly, how to do it, how not to do it, why to do it, or if you're out there in the Rhode Island and or Southern Massachusetts area and you're looking for that quality property manager, then Jimmy Murray's going to be your guy. But most importantly right now for you and I, all of you entrepreneurs listening, driving, washing dishes, etc., let's get ready to listen, learn, and love Jimmy Murray. Jimmy, how you doing?
Excited to be here. This is like a huge coming of age moment for me, being featured on your podcast. Really excited.
Totally understood. So did you just call me old? Is that what you're
No. Good stuff. I honestly, I probably got to, I don't know. I actually have no idea how old you are. So, but I know that you have a very well-respected podcast that's been around for a while and provides a ton of great content to your listeners. So very appreciative of the opportunity.
Totally understood. And I'm glad that you are here. Now, the fact that you've been a listener and you know that, we've been around for a while, let's go ahead and get that first question out of the way. Because as you know, I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. So if you think about Batman, Robin, Hulk, Black Widow, etc., because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, as an entrepreneur, I can envision myself, flying around town, possibly wearing a cape and tights and using our products and services to save our customers one person at a time. Also, though, as a, entrepreneur, we have a beginning just like superheroes. So if you think about Spider-Man, there was a time where he was just a kid going to school, doing his thing. Then one day wakes up and decides, man, I have a superhuman ability and I got to figure out what to do with these powers. Am I going to use them for good or for evil? So my question to you is as follows. Before getting started in apartments, before the property management company, before even real estate was a thought in your head, what we want to know is, who is Jimmy Murray?
Yeah. So honestly, I was always a very cerebral kid. Like I always put a ton of thought into things, right? But I always had an entrepreneurial tilt. Now, real estate didn't come along until the earliest I can think back to was 8th grade. I wrote a letter to myself for when I graduated high school asking what real estate investments I owned and what stocks I had invested in. So it started pretty early. But I'm huge on the Myers-Briggs profiles, right? So when I got to college, I took it for the first time. And my 4-letter acronym is INTJ. So this made sense why I was so cerebral as a kid, but that's an architect type mindset. And it makes sense because I overanalyze everything. I want to try and like break it down at a very small level and then rebuild it. And that's just how I always was as a kid.
Interesting. Now, I'm willing to bet that there's a number of people who can identify with your INTJ. Side note, by the way, INFP over here.
Nice.
So it's kind of interesting how that started. But I'm curious. You said in the 8th grade, you decided to write a letter to yourself. Where did that idea come from? Was this like a homework assignment or something? I mean,
Yeah. Yep. So our language arts teacher said, hey, listen, beginning of the year, you guys are going to sit down. You're going to write a letter to your future self when you graduate high school. You can write whatever you want. It's got to be 2 pages. You can ask yourself questions. Just trust me and know that you're going to appreciate it when you graduate high school. So fast forward 4 years later and I'm graduating high school and I'm reading that letter. I'm like, holy cow, I don't own any real estate right now, but maybe I should start to learn about it.
Okay. Yeah. I wonder how many 8th graders have a paper that they can point to and say,
right.
It's part of my plan. Like, really?
Yeah. Just craziness. So I read a book this past summer and it was called The Soul's Code and it talked about acorn theory. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
No, not yet.
So acorn theory talks about how we all start out as this small acorn and we have this like guide that follows our soul around in order to help us grow into that giant oak tree. So sometimes it takes longer for that acorn to be planted and grow into that massive oak tree. But the goal throughout your life should be trying to grow into that oak tree that you feel you want to become. So fortunately, from what we just talked about, that letter in 8th grade, I kind of like knew the direction that I wanted to head in. I didn't know that, I'd be a property manager like I am now or be invested in the things that I am. But, something in the back of my mind knew that real estate was going to be the path that I headed down.
So let's start with that. Because, see, I bet you there's a number of people right now who are listening who just said, yeah, me too, right? I knew that was the path. I wanted to be in real estate. But we've got to talk about that entry point. Like sometimes when you get into a pool for the first time, it's like a little cold. You're like, I don't know if I want to jump all in. You're trying to dip your toe, that type of thing. The process of transition for many keeps them out. So I would love to hear about your journey. How do we go from graduating high school, reading your note that serves as a reminder, your own accountability system right there, all the way over to into property management? Fill us in on the middle.
Yeah. So it didn't happen immediately going into real estate. So one of the things that you hinted at in your opening is that it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you finish, right? Mm-hmm. So when anyone looks at my degree, and this is how I got a job at a well-respected financial firm when I was out of college, my degree came from, if I've got any Monday Night Football fans out there, the Ohio State University. But I started at a local community college in Rhode Island, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important because some of the people were saying, yeah, me too, I don't know where to start, or thinking of how to start, just start, right? It doesn't matter if you start on a very small scale, just continue to make small daily improvements and you'll get there. My story, community college, I didn't study real estate. I got a degree in finance from Ohio State, and I made fun of my friends that took real estate classes. I was taking classes geared towards the stock market, and the strategy was to get a job on real estate, get a job on Wall Street, make a ton of money, and then invest in real estate. And I had a really cool opportunity. Like I interviewed at Goldman Sachs and a couple other places the summer before I graduated, and it didn't work out, so I had to move home. And I took a job at a financial firm, and I studied for the CFA exam. So for those of you who aren't familiar, it's the Chartered Financial Analyst exam, and it is extremely difficult.
Yep.
I studied for 6 months, and I scored in the top 10% of the failures. They actually wrote that like on the letter, right? So not you just failed, you were like the closest to passing, but you still failed.
Yeah, right.
That was the turning point. So I had to decide if I wanted to invest a few $1,000s and a ton of time back to study for the CFA. So this is still thinking about the path of becoming a stock analyst, picking stocks, making a ton of money, and then investing in real estate. Or did I want to take that money and invest in my first 4 family? And being on this podcast, I think a lot of folks can read between the lines. So I pushed the CFA aside, and I ended up going on the hunt for my first 4 family. And I purchased my first 4 family at 23 years old in 2010. And it's been a crazy, in November of 2012. And it's been a crazy ride since then.
No doubt. So there's a couple of things here that I want to make sure that everybody hears about the journey and that nothing gets, swept under the rug, as they say.
Yep.
Because you said a phrase, small, daily, incremental changes. And Jimmy, I'm telling you right now, you lost half the people because that's not sexy, and it doesn't say 24 hours, and it definitely doesn't say overnight.
Yeah. So I started reading the book Atomic Habits, and they beat this into your head. I was always a firm believer in it, and so folks that may not think it's sexy and think it's really difficult, it's absolutely worth doing. However, it's not going to happen every day. Like I call like great entrepreneurs trained assassins, like folks that just go out there and kill it. But they always try to make that progress on a day-to-day basis, but some days it just doesn't happen. So, don't stress if it doesn't happen every day. The goal is to go out there and try to make it happen every day. And that's the biggest thing that I can relate to folks.
Yeah, I get you 100%. Now, you also said something that I think I want to make sure that people hear, or at least interpret in a way that I'm interpreting it. You mentioned that there was an opportunity over at Goldman that, didn't work out. And then there was the CFA exam that they tried to give you an 8th place trophy, man. And you're like, man, it still didn't work out.
Yep.
So could you say, or would you even be willing to say that your success is actually built on failures? Like literally built on top of past failures?
Oh yeah, hell yeah. My entire life. Like, I know this sounds kind of cliche, but I feel like I'm an underdog story. Like, I grew up playing a ton of baseball, and I was never the best baseball player. My brother was always
level. Of course you did. You're in Rhode Island. Go ahead. I'm just saying.
It's all tying together, right?
Yep.
So, played a ton of baseball, but I had to put in a ton of work. So, one of my mentors, I have what I call like social media mentors, right? One of them is Eric Thomas.
Oh, E.T. Awesome.
Love E.T. And he talks about you got to find like what your core value is, right? So he talks about how he's loyal in the track that he has, and I'd have it downloaded to my Apple Music. But like my core value is hard work. So when I'm faced up against it, I know that I have to put in more work. That is what is going to get me through it. And that's how I was able to get through those pivot points that you talked about. Not making it at Goldman and not passing the CFA.
Well, what here's the other thing that's interesting, though, because the societal pressure or the norms or those around us and the environment, they were okay with those things, right?
Right.
They were probably very supportive of, Goldman, do that. That's great. Or CFA, oh, totally. You got this, Jimmy. And then you're like, I apparently don't. And now I'm going to try this real estate thing. What was their attitude then?
You just served me such a softball. I love it. And we didn't talk, like, people listening are going to think we talked about this, and we didn't. So going back to the baseball field, I'm 8 years old. My first at bat, I strike out. I walk back to the dugout, and I'm bumming. And my dad's the coach. And he sits me down, and he was never like the loud guy that was yelling. And he's like, "What's the matter?" I said, "I struck out. I want to get a base hit. I want to get on base." He said, "Listen, there's one thing that you have to remember. You can do anything you set your mind to, right?" So fast forward to my first real estate investment. My dad was fully supportive with my great job, studying for the CFA, and then I told him I was going to invest in real estate. And he told me, that is the biggest financial mistake you will make in your life.
Nice.
So you think like this is the guy that I've looked up to my entire life. He's been my closest mentor to this part of my life, and then this is what he says to me.
Right.
And honestly, like, I don't think that I'm any type of superhero for doing it, but I just had such a belief in investing in real estate that I put that aside. And it wasn't like I want to prove my dad wrong to show that I could do it. It was something that I felt compelled to do. And I think that's another spot where a lot of people get crossed up. You know, sometimes your closest mentors are going to tell you, I don't think that's a good idea, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. If you believe in it enough, you should continue to chase whatever you're willing to chase.
I agree 100%. And the track, the path, the journey of an entrepreneur is often, well, lonely, or it feels like you have been abandoned by those that you respect and love, and that love and trust you. And I'm pretty sure that there's a few people who are in that situation at this moment and at various stages. I guess my question becomes, at that moment, knowing what you know today, is there anything you wanted someone to say to you or hoped would happen to somehow maybe make it easier, make it more certain, or was it beneficial to have it happen this way, in your opinion?
I think it was beneficial. I'm just like, I've got this tilt that and honestly, it happened last week. We're like working through our second seminar that we're going to host locally, actually out in Fall River, Massachusetts. And the woman was like asking questions about what we do. And we were telling her that we teach folks how to invest in real estate. And she was kind of like, oh, you do? And I'm like, perfect. I'm heading in the right direction, because she can't see the vision, right? Like, I know that I believe in it firmly enough that I'm going to be able to hopefully coach people to invest in real estate and live the life that they desire. But not everyone's going to believe in that vision along the way. But as long as you do, nobody else has to.
Preach it, brother. How I feel about that one. So let me ask you this question. How do we get to the stage? Because most people, when they're thinking about, real estate, etc., very rarely do I hear someone going, I can't wait to be a property manager, 600 doors and stuff. You know what I'm saying? I rarely hear that. So I got to find out, how did we end up there?
Yeah. So this is what I figured out. So I bought my first 4-family. I was house hacking it. And I was still working my full-time job. Mm-hmm. And then I started wholesaling. And I'm like, perfect. Wholesaling is going to break me out of my cage. My cage at the Cube Farm. That's what we used to joke about. I had a buddy.
Cube Farm.
We actually, we used to call it Shawshank. And he's like, dude, listen, I know that we got to come in every day, but when you go home every night, you got to make sure you dig your tunnel. And that's my buddy Joe. And Joe actually owns his own brewery now locally, which is really cool. So we both dug our tunnel out of there, and we're having success. But that's what you have to wake up and do every day. I forget where I was headed because I got really excited about that Shawshank comment because Joe's a really close friend of mine.
Yeah. No, totally understood. But we were talking about the path. I mean, you were digging your tunnel to freedom, I'm assuming.
And I thought it was going to be wholesaling.
Yes.
And then
so did I, by the way. But you probably, yeah. That's what we started with too.
Yeah. So now going back to that INTJ comment, like, I was an extreme introvert. Right. Like, I didn't know how to sell anything. And I'm getting, like, I pushed out some good marketing at a high response rate, and I had no idea what the heck I was doing. But I kept doing it. And, I did close my first wholesale deal and netted a gain of $15,000. But now I'm like, all right, what do I do now? Right? So I continued to market, found some other lists. I mailed a high equity list to landlords in Attleboro, Massachusetts, and Pawtucket to start. Mm-hmm. The second one was a probate list. So I used to go to a local town hall in Cranston, Rhode Island, and I'd bring them coffee, and they'd open up all the probate records and help me out. And then the third one was an inherited list. And man, I never got so many death threats from mailing a list before that inherited list. It was wild. People calling me, telling me to take them off the list, but not giving me the information. I'm like, well, you're going to get another letter. Like, I'm not going to stop mailing my list. And I circled back to the list that I closed the most deals on, and it was that high equity, tired landlord list. And now I end up buying my second prop. Fast forward to 2015, I end up buying my second 4-unit. I started having success with a wholesale business. I found a private money lender to fund our deals so that we weren't wholesaling them, but we actually became rehires. And then I realized I was good at property management, so we launched it. So early 2015 is a bit of a cluster.
Yeah.
And by June, I recognized I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none. And then I kind of had the revelation. I sat back and I looked at it. And as a property manager, what your management fee is on a monthly basis, at least in our market, is pretty similar to the dollars per door that an investor makes, right? So if my original goal was, I'm going to get out of corporate by buying a bunch of real estate, and then I realized, hey, I don't have a silver spoon in my mouth. I had to work for every dollar that I have. I don't mind managing tenants, and I know that property management is a business of process. So let's see if I can do, create a property management business and get myself out of the cage, and then work to build other streams of income from there.
I like it. And I really like the fact then that you were focused on the net income, if you will, because for those who didn't catch what he was saying, it's like if you can own the property, sure, yes, you're going to have significantly more risk, and there is definitely some more upside. But from a cash flow standpoint, what he's saying is that the cash flow that the owner takes home is about the same as what the property manager would take home without the risk, and it could allow him to get to his freedom number faster, which is exactly what it sounds like you're doing. Now, you mentioned adding additional lines of revenue, which suggests that we're going through another transformation. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so honestly, that's been happening in the last 3 or 4 months. So I always quote this book called The Pumpkin Plan, and I quoted it for years.
Michael Michalowicz.
Yes. Yep, and I'm glad you pronounced that correctly, because I would have butchered that name.
I know, right? Now, you didn't ask me to spell it. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, normally I'm just like, he wrote The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, too. That was a pretty good book, too.
Yes.
So the crux of that book is farmers who grow giant pumpkins, the 1,000-pound pumpkins, that's not an entire pumpkin patch that they grow. They focus on one pumpkin. And that's the idea in business as well, right? So beginning of 2015, I'm rehabbing houses, wholesaling, I'm buying my own stuff, launching the property management company. I don't have a 1,000-pound pumpkin. So June of 2015, I start focused on growing that 1,000-pound pumpkin, which would become Lion Property Management. And I don't think that we're fully a 1,000-pound pumpkin yet. We're probably around 800 pounds. But now, I don't fully mean to name drop, but it was a cool moment. I had a conversation with Gino Barbaro, and he said, listen, Jimmy, what's going to be really cool is as you build this business, you're going to find that there's other things that you can bolt onto the side that actually funnel money back into the core business, but help you to continue to build the life that you want to lead. So what we've been doing recently at Lion, because we've stabilized our business, and another part of the pumpkin plan is only working with precisely the clients that you want to work with. So we fired over 100 units of clients in Q4 of 2019. And we can circle back on that one. But now we realize that we have a core set of clients that we really like to work with. So how do we get them more deals to grow their portfolios? So we brought in a wholesaler, and then we've recently hired 2 investment-minded realtors that are going to help them continue to grow their portfolio and chase that residual income that they're looking for.
You know what I like about what you just said there? Because that's something that I don't think enough entrepreneurs, and specifically in real estate, consider. Because there's only so many ways to grow a business, but more importantly, when you understand the difference between each lever that you do have available, you can now make more choices. Because obviously you can grow your business by adding more leads. You can grow your business by trying to get, just convert more of those leads to customers. And you can also grow your business by trying to get, customers to come back more frequently. But what I like, what you're talking about here is the margin. You're like, hey, how can I help them and solve their problem? You're literally looking at that they have this particular problem right here. And if we can help them double the size, triple the size of their portfolio, naturally, we would also increase our management revenue. I like that approach a lot. How's that been going?
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I'm glad that you are enjoying what you are hearing thus far. But here's one of the things that's really important. One of the most important things that you can do is get started. One of the things that I've said before, and I say again, once you get started, stay started. But more importantly, there can be lots of roadblocks to getting started. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove one of those roadblocks for you and make it a little bit easier. Because the thing that I don't want to stop you is thinking, do I need a local number? How about a long distance number? Or should it be 800? How on earth am I going to make that happen so that people can contact me as I'm out there building my business, making my cash flow grow? But most importantly, understanding that it doesn't have to be difficult. Many of you may know, but if you don't, there's a company out there by the name of Grasshopper. And what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygrasshopper.com/cashflow diary. Grasshopper is the entrepreneur's phone system. It works like a traditional phone system, but requires no hardware to purchase, no software to install. It's just a number that flat works. So if you are out there building that distributed workforce across many different locations, it's a way for you to still go out there and make your number be unified, simple, easy to use, something we've been using for quite some time. So again, go over to trygrasshopper.com/cashflow diary. Now, let's get back to the rest of the story.
Yeah, so honestly, it's been going really well because I can focus on further developing deeper relationships with the clients that we really enjoy working with.
Yeah.
But for the investors listening in and listening to this, what sounds like a jaded property manager, I think this is really important to listen in on right now. If you are an investor, it is really, really important to find a property manager that shares a similar investment philosophy as you. So, like a lot of people, I'll tell you that now, when I receive a lead, those conversations that I'm having as a property manager, I'm screening that lead to see if I want to work with them. Right? It's not all about taking on every single client that you can.
Right.
And anytime anybody leads in with, what's your pricing? I know that is probably not the right fit. I'm not saying that I'm super expensive. In terms of the market that I'm in, I'm about middle of the road. I'm not too cheap and not too expensive, kind of like the Goldilocks approach. But if you're reaching out as an investor, trying to screen that property manager, you're better off asking approach questions. Like, what's your average turnaround time on a unit turnover and placing a new tenant? And what's your approach on, do you complete a move-out condition statement? And how thorough are your turnovers? And what do you typically do in a turnover? Those are really good investment type questions that you need to be asking your property manager, and then worry about their fees later. Because you want to...
I agree. And specifically with renewal rate, that's the other one that's always in the back of my head is, how long do these tenants stay with you, Right.
Really important. Yeah. So getting more real estate related now, vacancy cost is a silent killer, right? So that's like one of those invisible killers in your pro forma that a lot of people don't think about. A lot of realtors miss it in their listings. And a lot of investors may say, well, the previous owner had zero vacancy for the last 5 years. I'm going to put in 0. And that's not always the case. Like, you're always going to experience vacancy.
Not always the case, AKA not true, never has been true.
Yeah.
And and now you get to find out how not true it is now that you own the property. So
right.
When it comes down to it, if you had to say, that 8-year-old person, did you see this ahead of you in any way, shape, or form? Could you have predicted it? Would you have written the story this way?
No, but I love the way that it unfolded. I'm going to circle back to E.T. Yeah. And one of his tracks, he talks about it takes 21 years to be 21 years old, right? And not to go too deep and religious on you, but God's going to give you exactly what you need when you need it. And it may not always feel that way, but it is. It's going to work out that way. So you may have to take a couple lumps, but whatever you believe in, somebody's trying to show you something.
Yeah, 100%.
So keep trying to push through it.
Those that have listened this far want to find out more. Maybe they've got a property over in the area and now they're ready to help you build that 1,000-pound pumpkin. What's going to be the best way for them to track you down?
Definitely. So check us out on our website at Lyon, Lyon, propertygroup.com, or give me a follow on Instagram under the handle The Notorious CFK.
Okay. Now you got to explain that one, because everybody like, okay, what? Because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't naturally sound like something someone was expecting from a property manager. So tell us the story.
Yeah, so a couple different angles here, right? So first I'll start in how I got there, and then I want to bring in Charlie. So I don't know if you follow Charlie on Instagram, but we'll talk about that as well.
Okay.
So I firmly believe in the power of visualization. So from the time that I was a young kid, I loved the song Juicy by Notorious B.I.G. How he talks about, how he came up from being negative to positive, and it's all good, right? So I think that's really important. And where that ties in, for the last 2 years, I worked in corporate America for close to 7 years, 6 years at the company before I left and became a corporate dropout. But for that last 2 years, I would walk those halls every day thinking about the email that I was going to write when I left. Right? So when I left the corporate gig, I penned an email to 200 of my closest friends, and it was to the lyrics of Juicy by Notorious B.I.G. And I left about 2.5 years ago, and we're recording this in January 2020. In December 2019, I bumped into one of my old managers a couple days before Christmas at a local Home Depot, and he said, "Holy cow, somebody actually brought up your email last week." I've actually had that run in a couple of times, and it wasn't like trying to stick it in the eye of the man. It was more of like trying to show people like, this is how I dug my tunnel out of corporate, and you can do it too. And I'm not saying that you got to take every piece of the puzzle, but if I can give you a piece that helps you get there that much more quickly, like they're just trying to do everyone a solid if they're trying to get out. So during that process, I came across Conor McGregor. So from Notorious B.I.G. to the Notorious MMA, and Conor McGregor introduced me to the book The Secret.
Got it.
So it's all about the power of visualization and then speaking things into existence. So I know Conor McGregor is absolutely notorious. A lot of folks don't really like him. But if you really listen to his interviews, I would say not like pre-fight interviews, but really just on mindset and his approach, visualization is huge. So I've always played around with the hashtag since I started investing, hashtag Cashflow Kings. Now I record a podcast on a bi-weekly basis called The Cashflow Kings. And last September, I was hosting an event, and I was talking about visualization, and I had a different handle on Instagram. But as I was talking about the Notorious B.I.G. and the Notorious MMA, I recognized that I had to become my alter ego, the Notorious CFK, to really complete that vision of who I wanted to and who I was becoming. That goes into CEO Charlie. So Charlie Jabley is the former manager of 2 Chainz, the rapper, and I follow him pretty closely on social media. But Charlie talks about how from the time he was a young kid and in high school, he built a recording studio in his mom's house and attracted all these rappers from down south. But he created this idea of CEO Charlie because he wanted to be a music executive. And then he reached a cool turning point because he had that idea, he achieved that, but he recognized it wasn't the life that he wanted to leave. I believe he had a brain tumor, he was 300 plus pounds, and he just wasn't the person that he wanted to be. So he created a second alter ego called Charlie Rocket. And over the course of a year, Charlie Rocket lost over 100 pounds and actually became a Nike-sponsored athlete for his story. And if there's one piece of advice that I could leave with folks, like create that alter ego. Like really think of who you want to become and create a name for it. And that is going to make your visualization that much more powerful.
Love it. This is, I mean, there's so many things to take away from what you've said today. And just to see that it's a continual journey, always growing, processes, people, resources, things coming to the table as they need to, not before, but right when it is necessary. And just understanding that going through that process is a part of the journey. and learning to be okay with it as
Yeah.
well, for sure.
Yeah, you're not. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go back to a baseball comment. You're not always going to bat 1,000, right? A lot of the Hall of Famers, they joke that as long as you bat above 300, you're going to make the Hall of Fame. Hopefully, in business, you're a lot more successful than getting it right 30% of the time. But you got to go out there and just take constant action. If you fail, those are the best learning opportunities. As cliche as it sounds, but it's the absolute truth.
100%. I definitely appreciate you, taking the time to care enough to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? Well, get over to Lion Property Group. Go check out IG, because you want to know who the notorious CFK is.
Nice.
Don't play like you don't know. And at the end of the day, what it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen, is that action is what makes it happen. Sitting around thinking about it and staying in your cube farm isn't going to get you there. Yet, you can do it. Small, incremental, daily. It's not sexy, doesn't have to be, but it is possible for you and me. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.